Okay, so I just ran across one of the craziest stories I've ever seen, and this is about Wong. And if you haven't heard this story, it's pretty freaking weird, to be honest with you, because this was set in like 1977 in a little province of China. It was a small farming village, is what it was. They didn't have access to anything like cars, and hell, they barely even had bicycles. Like that was an expensive commodity for them. Anyways, this guy ends up traveling like 500 miles or a little over 500 miles at one point in like a couple hours. So there's three major events to this, and the first one kind of gets the ball rolling. The second one gives a lot of testimony to the whole thing, and then the third one is just completely out there. It's like weird stuff has happened, and we're kind of figuring out how this happened. And you want to say, oh, they're full of crap, but really it's kind of hard to disprove this, and it's one of China's like most mysterious unsolved cases, and it kind of proves like the whole paranormal thing, or at least it does to them. And we'll go over some of the details of why this just shouldn't have happened in the first place, because like I said, it's kind of hard to explain. So to get this ball rolling, we'll talk about Wong. Now, Wong was a 21-year-old guy, and this was 1977. He was a farmer and lived in this village his whole life and was just part of the community. It wasn't a massive village, but a still pretty good size. Now, his childhood, there isn't a lot to go over because there isn't a lot to say about it, except for like his mother passed away whenever he was a young child. But other than that, it was a pretty normal childhood. He just went out, hung out with all the other kids, played. Everything was normal all the way up until this day. Now, at this point in time, he has a fiance. They're planning on getting married and all this other jazz, and they're building this house together. It's still unfinished, but you know, they're working on it and everything's going good. His life is normal, everything is fine. But on July 27th, things go pretty weird. He gets off work around 10 p.m. and goes home and passes out. Well, he goes to his unfinished home and passes out. I guess he didn't want to go all the way to his family member's house or wherever else he was staying. So he goes there and passes out to 10 p.m. And this is the last time the village will see him for quite some time. Now, the next morning, everybody gets up, they go to work, and they notice Wong's missing. They're like, where's he at? He's a pretty consistent person, so it's kind of odd for him to be missing. Well, they go out and they start looking for him. His family gets really worried, and they're like, we don't know where he would have went because, number one, he's dedicated to work. Number two, he just doesn't ever disappear. He has no real big plans to go anywhere. He doesn't normally just take off, and they're like, we need to set out a search party. They're worried something has happened to him. So the village puts on this big massive search party. They search all the fields, they go to the cliffs, they're looking everywhere for him, and they just straight up can't find him. So they assume the worst has happened. They're like, we can't find him, something bad's happened to him. Well, 10 days after he disappeared, they get a telegram. Now, back in the day in rural China in 1977, you got telegrams. Now, a telegram back in the day was something like a phone line text message. It's very weird to explain, but they had these phone lines sent way across the country, and then they would use some sort of code to send out these little short messages so people could get a hold of other people. Well, they get this telegram and they're like, hey, we found Wong, and it was from Shanghai. They're like, this makes absolutely no sense. Wong doesn't have enough money to travel. He never leaves the village. Why would he be in Shanghai? It makes absolutely no sense. Well, after they confirmed that's where Wong was from, the Shanghai police send him back, and the villagers have some questions, and he don't have a lot of answers, just one extremely wild story. So he's telling him, he's like, hey, you know what? I got off work, I went home, I passed out, I was super tired, and around 6 or 7 a.m., I woke up, but it wasn't to the sound of animals. It was to the sound of cars and horns and traffic. He said, I looked around and I'm surrounded by all these people. I'm surrounded by these buildings and neon lights. There's cars everywhere, these tall skyscrapers. He's like, I have no clue what's going on. I just went to sleep and woke up in this random location. And he's really confused. I mean, you got to imagine, he comes from a really, laid back farming village where they just work. There's not a lot of people, to waking up in all this massive chaos. I mean, a big city is hard to deal with, even if you're used to cities. So he wakes up here and he's walking around and he's just confused. He don't know what's going on. And he sees signs. They're like Neijing restaurant, Neijing shopping center, Neijing theater. And that's the only bearing he has. He's like, how am I in Neijing? That is 500 miles away. He is utterly confused. Now, at this point, people are kind of like weirded out by him because he's like, I don't know what's going on. Well, two cops see him. They come over to him and they're like, hey, what are you doing here? And why do you look so confused? What's going on here? He's like, he doesn't know what to say. He's just like, I'm lost. lost. I don't know. I'm just lost. And they're like, well, we're going to get you somewhere. So the cops give him the tickets and they're like, we're going to meet you there. And he's like, that's kind of weird, but whatever. And they give him tickets to Shanghai. Well, he takes the train, he gets to Shanghai. Whenever he gets off the train, he goes walking to try to find the nearest police station. When he does, these two cops show back up. Now, these cops did not enter the train with him, and they obviously didn't board the one before him. And he's like, how did they get here? They traveled faster than I did, but train is literally the fastest way to get there. I think the distance is like 100 and some miles, so there is no way that these cops are there. But they are. Now, Wong is still like, I don't know what's going on. So he wants to go to the nearest police station to figure something out. And these two cops are like, no, we're going to escort you to a reparation camp and then you can get yourself sorted out. Now, back in China in 1977, it kind of fills in why this is such a big deal, because the reparation camp wasn't exactly like what you may think it is. It's more like a holding place for people that left their village and showed up without documentation to a city. So, like, whenever people were trying to run away or whatever, they would do this, and if they didn't have documentation, they would take them to a reparation camp and send them back to their village, or if they couldn't figure it out, they would send them to jail, because you weren't exactly allowed to travel around without the proper documentation. People just couldn't travel. This was a long time ago in China, and it was a very big deal. Like, that's why the communist thing was such a big deal. Like, it was a very strict thing. You just did not leave your village and go wandering around. So that's kind of what makes this story such a big deal. Now, whenever he gets to this reparation camp, he tells the story to the first officer he sees, and that is Lou. Now, Lou is just a military officer that kind of guards and patrols and deals with the whole situation. And Lou's like, I don't know, this seems kind of weird or whatever, but come to find out, Lou is from the same village. And it's kind of coincidental that he ends up at this reparation camp with somebody that can kind of help him out. So Lou gets a hold of his family from this village, and they're like, yeah, we know who he is. He's got a certain characteristic birthmark. Lou's like, yeah, it checks out. And he's like, okay, it seems like you're good to go. And his reason it's so confusing is because they literally don't have the modes of transportation from that village to get there. There's like one road in and out, and really the head villager doesn't even have a car. Like, it's very rare for them to have anything like this. I mean, the telegram was literally dated at like 9 a.m. on the 28th. It was 11 hours after he got off work. It just doesn't make sense. The nearest train station is approximately 4 hours away, so that's with a car ride. They don't have cars. There was airports, but like very few, and it was just kind of popping up with aviation in this part of China. And not even to mention, it was extremely expensive for these people, and they don't have money. So all of it is just super confusing. Now, all the villagers are just kind of like, yeah, whatever, we'll just let it blow off. It's just one of them weird occurrences. Something happened. Nobody knows really how it did. Some of the villagers just thinks he's boasting because he went to a big city, and some of them don't really believe him and kind of give him crap about it. That is until it happens again. So on to the second weird thing that happened to Wong and absolutely wrecked his life. This was on September 8th of 1977. It was about a little over a month after the first event, and this was during peak harvest season. Now, if you remembered, he had his fiance, everything was going good, and then the event happened, and that kind of screwed everything up for him a little bit, but his life got back on track. Anyways, this is peak harvest season, and they have to get this done. So they're all sitting there working themselves into the dirt. They just have to do this. And it was once again around 10 p.m. whenever his boss, or, the head farmer, he's like, listen, Wong, I'll let you and these guys go home, but I need you to get up really early and go get this fertilizer for me because I have to have it tomorrow. But other than that, you can take the evening off if you do this for me. So Wong, who is completely wore out, takes the offer, goes back to his unfinished house, once again falls asleep. Now, the next morning, all the men show up at the fertilizer storage area, and Wong's not there. They're like, well, maybe he overslept. So they go back to his house, and once again, he's not there. They're like, why is this an issue with him? So they put out a little bit of a search party looking for him. They can't find him. Everything's all chaotic. They're like, whatever, we'll just get everything done. Harvest season's happening. We can't make this such a big deal. He's obviously done this before, and they kind of go about their business. However, they didn't have to wait too long, because on September 11th, he was returned from Shanghai once again. This was 3 days after he disappeared. So unlike the first time whenever he disappeared, and it took 10 days, but that was due to miscommunication through the telegram, which got sent to the wrong village in the first place. Anyways, he gets back to the village and they're like, "What happened this time, Wong? Did you get teleported off?" And he's like, "Yeah, I really have no idea how this happened, but it's really weird what went down." So he goes over the story. He's like, "I went home, I fell asleep, but this time I woke up to a cold breeze, and whenever I opened my eyes, I was in the railway station that the two mysterious men dropped me off at before. But the problem is he showed up in Shanghai during a typhoon. So he wakes up, he's in Shanghai, it's a typhoon, there's wind blowing, rain coming down, he's utterly lost without there being any wind, rain, and chaos going on. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. He just somehow went to sleep 4 hours ago and woke up in Shanghai, which is 600 miles away from his home, and he's just lost. So he's like, I have to find my way out of this. The only person I know is Lou, and I have no idea how to navigate this place. He's like, I've never been around here. I don't know any of the places. I don't know how to get a hold of Lou. I don't know how to do anything here. I'm just lost. So he just takes off walking through this freaking windstorm and typhoon, and he hears from behind him, "Hey there, you must be Wong. Are you looking to go to Fairfax County?" Now, this startles him to death because there's no people around. There's nothing happening. He's just walking through the storm and somebody recognizes him. So he turns around and sees two men in military uniform that he kind of recognizes, but he's not sure. And they tell him, they're like, "Yeah, we were sent here by Lou to escort you back to him, and he told us to meet you at the train station." He's like, "That's very odd because I wasn't planning on coming here. I don't know what I'm doing," but he's out of options. He doesn't have any other sources. So he's like, okay. He follows the two men. They go on this big bus route. They go with ferries. They go through all this rigmarole, and he's just like going along with it because he has no other option. Well, they show up to an artillery military base. Now, this is a highly guarded military base. You have to have the proper documentation to make it inside of it. Well, the two men just walk up to the military base. They speak to some people. They let him through, and they go to Lou's house. And when they show up at Lou's house, they knock on the door. They go inside, and Lou isn't there. Lee, his wife, is. And she's like, "Yeah, what are you all doing here?" And they're like, "Listen, we don't have time to talk," or whatever. They're like, "Here's Wong, we're peacing out." So they just nope on out and leave, and nobody knows where they went afterwards. Now, Lee goes on to say, it is very unusual for people to show up here. And not only that, the way that he showed up is almost impossible because whenever you have visitors to this military base, you have to bring the proper documentation. They have to interview you. Not only that, they call on you to come down and verify that this is in fact somebody that you know. And she said they skipped this whole process, which is extremely unsettling. Now, whenever Lou shows up, he sees Wong in his house and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And his wife's like, "Some people brought him and dropped him off, and I have no clue how he got here." Now, this is a major security concern for this military base. How did this guy get in here? Well, the military starts bringing it down. They're like interviewing the guards. They're like, "Who let this guy in here?" And they're like, "We've never seen anybody come in, come out." Even the guards that Wong recognized, they were like, "No, we've never seen this man in our life. If he come through here, we would have known, and obviously we're not going to break protocol for just some random person." So they start interviewing Wong. They're like, "Who are you? Where'd you come from?" They start blasting telegrams at the village. They're like, "Who is this guy? Is he a freaking spy? Like, what's going on here?" And they're wanting to get to the bottom of this. Well, the village responds. They're like, "No, he's just a local farmer. He's pretty timid in every way, shape, or form, and he's really never gotten into anything. We don't know why he's there or how he even got there." Well, the military's like, "Okay, listen, we're sending you back home, but if you ever show up here again, you will be jailed. You cannot be here." Now, in the official reports from the military, they say they have no clue how he even got there because there was witnesses that seen him leave, and then there was witnesses from the military that sent him back, and they cannot figure out how he arrived there in such a short amount of time. And whenever he gets back, the rumor mills really start firing up because people seen him before he left at like 10 o'clock, and then the military knows that he arrived at a certain time, and it just doesn't match up. Well, the paranoia starts popping out, and he gets kind of shunned for this. They're like, "There's something supernatural about you. You're either like some sort of demon, a time traveler, or something that is not natural." And they kind of ostracize him from the group. He still goes to work and everything, but like, it's so bad that his fiance ends up suing him for making her look totally bad whenever she had nothing to do with this, but she sues him for a crazy amount. It's like $500 US today. But if you look at how much money they made, based on US dollars, it was around $77 a year as a rural farmer in China in 1977. So it was multiple years of salary is what she sued him for and won. She ended up splitting him. She got the money. Now at this point, Wong is financially ruined. He lost the girl that he was in love with. His house is still not even finished. He can't pay anything. His family hates him. Everybody is just against him at this point. And he goes into a pretty big downward spiral. He's just living life. He's hating everything. It sucks. And he hits the lowest point of his life whenever the third incident happens. So on to the third and hopefully final event for Wong, because his life is pretty chaotic. And this happens 2 weeks after the second event. So the second event took place on September 8th of 1977, and this one takes place on September 20th of 1977. Anyways, he gets off work and he takes off walking to his unfinished home, and by the time he makes it to his front yard, he just passes out from exhaustion. He literally falls asleep in his front yard. Only this time he wakes up, he's not in his front yard, he's not in an abandoned train station, he's not on city sidewalks, he's in a luxury hotel, and he's like, yeah, this is really odd. Now, once again, he has no money, so there's no way for him to just show up in luxury hotels. So he wakes up, he turns around, and he sees two men standing there, and they proceed to tell him, they're like, yeah, we were the ones that dressed up as military men and the police. And he kind of recognizes them. He's like, yeah, I've seen you all a couple different times. And they're like, well, we had to dress up like that in order to get you back home safely. And Wong's like, well, are you going to explain anything to me? And they're like, yeah, well, listen, we will explain things to you, but first we're just going to let you know that we are kind of taking you on a vacation. We want you to see China, so we're going to take you on a 9-day tour, and every day we're going to go to a different city. So they proceed to do exactly this, but he said that the way that they travel was extremely just not human at all. What they would do is they would tell him to get on their backs and they would take off and fly. He's like, they would literally fly me around, and whenever they would get tired, they would land, I'd get on the other person's back, they'd switch me back and forth. He said they would fly really low, and what was seemingly to be kind of slow, but there was no air movement, there was nothing like that. And whatever city they wanted to get to, they could get to in an hour or less. It didn't really matter how long the distance was, it would only take them an hour, and they would just kind of teleport through something to get there. But what Wong found fascinating is, other than that, they were perfectly normal. They would eat normally, they would sleep normally, just everything. He noticed that whenever he was riding on their backs, their body temperature felt normal. Other than the we can fly and kind of teleport thing, they were just normal, everyday people. Now, whenever they were taking him to all these different cities, he noticed something weird besides the fact that they could teleport and fly, was that their dialect would completely fit in with whatever part of the country they were in. They just literally fit into the situation. Not only that, but whenever they needed a police uniform or a military uniform, one of them would stay and watch him, while the other one would go somewhere unknown and get the uniforms. He don't know where they come from. He said they never really fit right, but they would just get them. Now, there was a few places they went, so they went to a theater and they got to see a movie and all this other jazz. Not only that, but whenever they would come to the hotel, they would have this letter from the government saying that they were allowed to be there, they was allowed to have Wong there, and he said they really didn't carry much other than money, and they would kind of have food with them and stuff like that, because they carried nothing else with them. They didn't have backpacks, they didn't have anything like that. It was just money, these letters, and whatever they had with them. That was it. But they did take him on the 9-day journey. Now, Wong was obviously given some sort of rule set, and they was like, listen, the only thing you cannot do is you cannot take pictures of us, and you cannot take souvenirs from anywhere we go. That is a big no-no, and it's not going to happen. And Wong's like, okay, that's fine. I get to go on this free lifetime trip that never happens to anybody at all. But he had a few questions for him. He's like, is there any way you can tell me who you are? And they're like, no, stop asking those kinds of questions. We're not going to explain anything to you like that. And he's like, well, what about flying? Is there any way that you can teach me how you do this flying thing? And they gave him a very stern no, kind of knock it off with the questions after that. They was like, pretty much enjoy this or you're just screwed. Well, they did their whole tour, and at the end of the 9 days, they drop him off at a tree in the local village, and that's where he wakes up at. Now, at this point, this catches the headlines of everybody. I mean, you got the military looking into it, you got these parapsychology places looking into it, psychologists looking into it, and everybody wants to know what's going on. So the military itself comes and questions him, and they kind of arrest him and hold him because he was literally screwing up the farming situation, and they think that he was there to sabotage everything and screw up their production rates for the village. Now they had psychologists come in and test him, and they're like, no, everything checks out. He's completely healthy. He doesn't seem to be delusional. He's not a liar. He's not doing this and that. And they're like, okay, reluctantly, they let him go and return back to his life. But there are tons of investigations that go down with him. And in the end, the military just cannot figure out how he did this, how he could have any other way to do this. And they're like, it's unexplainable. We don't know what's happening. And that's just the end of the story. Closed case. We don't know. It's just a weird mystery. Well, years later, in like 2004, there was a UFO researcher group that wanted to kind of like debunk this story, because the only thing the military could come up with was maybe he was sleepwalking, which everybody made fun of. They're like, there's no way that he sleptwalked and he went to a train station that was a 4-hour car ride, bought a ticket, traveled to this other part of the country while he was asleep. It just doesn't make sense. So they're like, well, how else did he do it? Nobody knows. There's no way for him to make it to all these different places. They ended up giving him a polygraph test, which he failed, but the polygraph test was taken some like 20 some years after the events, and even the tester was like, listen, these results are going to be inconclusive. He's like, because it's just been too long ago. And Wong was like, I'll tell you, you all can say what you want, but I know for a fact it happened. So whatever the results are, they're either wrong or they're just wrong altogether, because there's no other way to say this besides I went to these places and this is what happened. And truthfully, a lot of people believe him. They even tried hypnosis on him, and the events he told come out to be the exact same ones that happened beforehand. But what was weird is during the hypnosis, the I guess they were brothers, showed up and told him that he was no longer allowed to be in hypnosis about this, and told him to leave the hypnosis state, and he woke up from it, which the hypnotist thought was extremely weird because you don't just normally pop out of it like that. Anyways, to this day, it's a very unsolved case, and it's considered one of China's like most documented, hard to disprove paranormal cases, and one that I find very interesting. And Wong really never got anything out of this. That's what the villagers told the military. They're like, he didn't do any of this because it pretty much ruined his life. We all called him a clown. Like, we all thought he was a liar, and until this last event, we really just didn't believe anything he said. But at this point, with so much evidence, we believe that Wong was just got screwed up somehow, and they become to like him again and kind of let him live his life and quit torturing him. But they couldn't figure out a reason for why he would do this. So they ended up defending him and wouldn't really let anybody talk trash about him. They just thought it's what happened. Now, there's quite a few different things out there of what this could be, but nobody really has a clue. The sleepwalking one kind of got thrown under the bus, and then you had something like military experiments, and people were like, well, why would the military abduct a random farmer whenever they had people on death row that they could use? It just didn't make sense. So in the end, it's just an unsolved paranormal case, and a very mysterious one, and I love it. So anyways, I hope you all enjoyed that, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribe or following or whatever, and I will make more like these. This actually took a very long time to produce. This is like an hour's long worth of recording that I've been just talking. So I've kind of put in a little bit of effort on this. So if you could like it, that would be cool. Or maybe leave a comment, tell me if you did or not. Just a simple yes or no will be just fine. And anyways, I appreciate y'all hanging out and watching it to the very end. This is a long one, and it's kind of new to me. So I hope you all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Bye.